Oh, hey, how's it going?
Not crazy, like.
Good? Yes. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the WRS seminar. Today's speaker is Heather Johnson, who works with the Minnesota Department of Ag in the Pesticide and Fertilizer Management Division. She has a master's degree in water resources science, and our major advisor was Satish Gupta, who's a regular at our seminars here. She's been with the MDA since 2006, and she's going to tell us about some of the new things that are happening in her world, leading to this talk on Minnesota's Runoff Risk Advisory Forecast tool. And she's also going to talk a little bit about things which a lot of the students care about, which is how to get a job after you graduate. So we're really happy to have her. And we should also thank her for the delicious cookies.
Yay! Well, thank you, everybody. Like I was telling Dr. Mulla, the last time I was in this room is when I defended my master's back in 2006. So having a little bit of flashbacks right now, but I think it'll go pretty well. Like Dave said, my name's Heather Johnson. I'm here today to talk about this Runoff Risk Advisory Forecast. I am a past graduate of this program, so I've been exactly where you are at, and I survived and made it through and have found several wonderful positions. And I'm looking forward to telling you about this and also talking to you about my career path. So let's go here. So today, when I talk about runoff risk, so this is an awesome photo from last week, April 17th, showing the runoff risk for the whole state. I'm going to be talking about what is runoff risk. I will also be going through, let's see, maybe I'll turn my this way, kind of the description of risk, how we made it, how it came to be. I'm going to show a video from NOAA. So the people in Wisconsin are the first ones who started with runoff risk. So they've made a great video that kind of gives the background, how it got started, and just kind of give you some overall information. I'm going to give a walkthrough of our runoff risk advisory forecast, talking about how we do the forecasting, what the risk levels are looking at, what do those risk levels mean. And then I'm going to show you some of the comparison work that I've done. So looking at how does this forecast really work? Is it off all the time, or is it correct all the time? And then totally unrelated, some career advice. So I'm going to talk through where I started right out of my undergrad and how I've gotten to where I'm at right now. So my husband always tells me to start with a joke. So I thought this was really funny. It says, my thesis is written in blood, and she cuts her finger on her paper, sweats, and the lady's sweating. Tears, what am I doing with my life? And coffee. So I felt that was really true. I can't tell you how many nights I sat in front of my computer on glorious days like this, trying to figure out how to run the model or how to get it to agree. And then when you're done, you're like, wow, I probably could have done all that work in about a month. So, but it does all come together. Another joke is, here's a guy, this is one way to think about maybe how fertilizers is getting into our waterways. It's just a guy pushing it into the storm drain. And then the ducks are saying, incoming, which we know is a lot more complicated than that, but that one made me laugh. But let's talk about runoff risk. So what is runoff risk? Well, this is an advice. So the Runoff Risk Advisory Forecast is a website tool designed to help farmers and commercial applicators determine the best time to apply manure. So precipitation, snowmelt, and other conditions can cause recently applied manure to run off. And this movement can decrease productivity and then increase the risk of impairing our local bodies of water. So us in partnership with National Weather Service have developed this system for Minnesota. And it's part of this Regional Risk Advisory Forecast project. So there are 4 states that have this project up and running right now. So you can see these are the latest screenshots from last week. We have Wisconsin up there, Michigan, Ohio, and then Minnesota. More states are looking at this. I think there's like 5 or 6 other states in talks. And what it is the National Weather Service produces all this data free of charge. The websites, the states then build the websites and the tools, and then we as partnerships all work together, making sure, you know, they all kind of have their own look, But if you look to each of the forecasts, they all say the same thing. A low in Minnesota is the same as a low in Wisconsin. So I think the overall goal is to make this a national project, but right now it is kind of state by state. And the National Weather Service pays for this through the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative funding, and we paid for our website tool through Clean Water Funds. So when you think about what's driving the risk of runoff, we have weather and soil characteristics are really a huge acute risk drivers, especially precipitation, the timing of that precipitation, and soil moisture. So we have great data from the Minnesota Discovery Farms, which indicates on average 41% of the annual surface runoff occurs as snowmelt in March and April. And then on average, 31% of the annual surface runoff occurs in May and June. And if you look at this a little bit closer, so this is a lot of data I have here, and this graphic is looking at the flow of water over the soil surface from snowmelt or rainfall. And we took 2,184 runoff events over 27 fields from 2004 through 2016. And what we see is that most of the surface runoff losses happen in the few of the largest runoff events. So in the top 10% of the runoff events, we lost 65% of our total phosphorus and 59% of our total nitrogen. So wouldn't it be great if we could find a way to stop that? I mean, think of what a difference we could make right there if we could control some more of these top 10% events. We would really see a great reduction on what we're seeing coming into our waterways. So when we think about forecasting then, I know, so then it goes into what our goals are. So our goals in Minnesota is we want to increase information available to producers to make informed daily decisions about when and where to spread. We want to identify and alert manure applicators on days when the risk of the runoff is high. We want to use existing models to help determine that risk, and then we're using on-farm and research data to evaluate how the model's actually working. Because again, we don't want a product out there that's not doing great. We want to make sure when we're putting out a forecast, it's saying what it means. So it does really go beyond, it's not just, oh, is it going to rain tomorrow? It really looks into a lot of different factors. So we're incorporating 7 days of future precipitation. We're looking at 10 days of forecast temperatures. And then we have specific model states that are looking for different risk conditions, including rainfall, past and future, temperatures, snowmelt potential, frozen ground, soil moisture, soil temperatures, and uncertainty. So then you have these basin-specific thresholds that are based on 20 years worth of data simulation. That data then all gets post-processed, ran into an output to produce the risk events, and you're left with a map like right there on the left that shows the runoff risk for October 3rd, 2018. So now, some of our first forecasting tools were, pretty good, but, it didn't really couldn't really look past tomorrow. So here's, the weather rock. Okay, I thought this was really funny. So I was just saying, we can do a lot better than this. So what I'm going to show you is where we're at with this runoff risk tool here in Wisconsin and how it came to be. So let me switch this here quick. It's just about a 7-minute video. I want you to note that it does in the video talk about how farmers are to blame solely for nutrients in the waterways. I know that's not true, so look past that. Let's see, can I get that any louder, or is that? All right, so that's just some background information. And when they said that second generation, that is actually where we are at right now. So we are running the second generation model. And I'm going to show you now what Minnesota's looks like. I'm going to see if this one works. Oh, no. Okay. So this is our homepage. So it gives a really brief introduction about what runoff risk is. There is the website. I would encourage you. So it's MDA. Oh, she could hear us, but couldn't hear the video. Okay, well, we'll send that link to make sure if you want to take a look at it, you certainly can. So there's the link, mda.state.mn.us/RRAF. You can bring it up on your smartphone, iPad, laptop. It works pretty well. So if through this presentation you want to take a look at it and you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those. You can also right here sign up to get an alert. So we have a system set up now where you can sign up by county that if you want to be alerted if there's a severe risk of runoff in your county that day. So you can either sign up for an email or a text alert, and you'd only get one once a day. And I think it's been really good. I know I've signed up for about 20 counties. So some of these days, I mean, if you really want to get some text messages, that's the way to go about it. I get a lot of those. And partly I'm doing it just, I'm still kind of beta testing all of this. I want to make sure if I get a text for Olmsted County, when I go to the runoff risk page, yep, there's severe in Olmsted County. I'm making sure that it all still works. But let's take a look at it. So there's a direct link right on the forecast on the main page right there. And here we are. So here is a screenshot from last week. This is from April 10th. I really like this graphic because it shows you every single type of risk that we can get. If we were to look at it right now, you'd see just a little bit of risk in the northwest area where there's still just a little bit of snow melt coming. But you can see up in the upper end corner, it'll tell you when it was last updated. So this screenshot was from April 10th. It came in at 7:47. Right now we have 2 model runs, so it runs at 5:30 in the morning. This gets updated. You get your text message. It runs again then at about 7:30, and as it's processing, when it's completely processed, then you get that new timestamp. Our hope is to get to 4 times because we'd always like to be giving the latest information based on the information that we're getting from the National Weather Service. And as you can see on the bottom, we have 3 different levels or 3 different days that we can look at. So we have a day 1, which is today. Day 2 is the risk and forecast for tomorrow. And then we have a day 3, which is the day after tomorrow. And then finally, we have a multi-day risk. And during regular, like non-snow conditions, that's a 3-day window. And during the winter, when we have frozen ground or snow covered, it is a 10-day window. And then you can see from here, I've selected the day 1 risk, and then we also have the legend, which I'll be going through. And I just wanted to show you because this is just, I think it's really interesting. So this was the forecast for Wednesday. If you guys remember last Wednesday, we got all that snow. So you can see, I felt like the runoff risk model did a great job. We really did have kind of that layer where a lot of Minnesota got the snowfall. You're seeing this is, all these areas in purple are indicating that you absolutely should not be out spreading because you'd have a severe risk of your manure running off on top of snow melting. And then when you go to the day 3 forecast, so again, this would be something that I'd be looking on the 10th, but I could see out 3 days to say, okay, well now if I live in the southeast area, I would be good to wait until day 3 to go do that application. But let's look now just at what those legends mean so you can understand a little bit more when I talk about these levels. So this is risk from April 13th, and I have different levels on here. And again, here are my 4 levels. So during the snow-covered times, I have these 4 levels of risk. Or non-snow-covered times, I have 4 levels of risk. During snow-covered, I have 2 levels of risk. And let me get to this. So when it's clear, that means there's no event. So you're fine to do your work, go about, do what you need to do. When it's low, to me, the model is just, you're getting an indication that there might be some precip coming or your soils are saturated and you should consider maybe waiting to apply. But that, again, is something that you should incorporate the other tools that you would use to make that determination. But we would ask when it gets to moderate or severe, the model's showing at a pretty good likelihood that you're going to get runoff. So if I saw this and I lived where that severe was, it'd be one of those indications where I would say, well, okay, can I wait to apply this? Maybe I could apply this tomorrow, or maybe there's another piece of land that I could apply to it. So I always like to say, we don't tell people that you can't apply. We're just saying delay. Delay until the forecast is better, or you can find another spot to put this and to put out your product. But again, as scientists, colors are great, but I really like data. So we do have some data for you. So this is a forecast from April 15th, again, just last week. And when you zoom in closer, you get a pop-up that is available right here. So again, you can see this is built on an ArcGIS format, so things kind of turn on and off, layers turn on and off. And when you zoom in close enough, you get this pop-up window, and the map becomes active with a bunch of grids. So we have grids covering the whole state. They're all 2 kilometers by 2 kilometers. So you pick a grid, and now you can see the information that is behind that grid. So if you click on the arrow, it expands it. And here is the data table. So we have one of these, again, for every single grid across the state. And you can see this is from Lyra Township in Blue Earth County. It gives you the lat and long, so you know exactly where this is from. If you were curious about that multi-day approach, you can see that we have a three-day risk window is severe. It'll tell you that, okay, this was updated on April 15th, so you know this is good data. It wasn't just, you know, last year's, you know, it was, you know, pretending today is the 15th, it was the 15th and it was at 7:30. And then we give you 5 days of complete forecast information, looking at the runoff risk. We also give you the forecast precip, forecast air temperature max and min. We have the 2-inch and the 6-inch soil temperature forecast, and then also the snow depth. And finally, across the bottom, we have an extended forecast where you can look out 10 days. I mean, you know, it's kind of like the weather forecast in this. I wouldn't bet my money on that 10th day, but it's something that you can consider as you're looking about what you should do. And then finally, you can also link to the National Weather Service hourly forecast or the 6-inch soil temperature network map down there, which I'll talk about a little bit more in just a minute. So if you had signed up to get an alert for Blue Earth County, this is what you would have gotten a text message that day saying, hey, let's wait, maybe go, it looks like your window would be go on the 16th, you would be okay. So across the top then we also have our other forecasts. So we have precipitation is another tab. Now I thought this one was kind of boring. This was for, again, Monday. So I'm looking at day 3, which this was just Wednesday, if you guys remember the rainfall we got. So again, I think this preset forecast did a pretty good job getting that. Again, you can, there's your legend. You have the different days you can turn off and on, and you can also zoom in on this map, get to those data tables. It's very interactive. Then across the top, we have the soil temperatures for the 2-inch and the 6-inch. Now this is where, I hate to admit this, but so this map is from October 3rd, you can see across the top, because right now our current maps are having some issues. It's not something that's run off, it's not our end, and it's not necessarily Chanhassen office, it's something at the national point where the model is just not outputting the information correctly. The runoff risk, everything like that is still correct, but we're not getting the right info. So if you went to it right now, you'd see there's a splash pad across it that says info not correct. So I keep hoping that they'll fix it soon, but if it was correct, like this one was, you can see how things were cooling down in October, which is reflected in the soil temperatures. And then here's the 6-inch. And what's really neat is on this map, you can see we have these little dots here. Well, these dots represent real-time data. So besides just getting the forecast, if you're like, I don't know, I want to get some more information, you can click on any of those dots and they'll be brought to either to something here where you can click a graph to enlarge like this, and you can see real-time soil temperature data, or you'll be brought to another site where you can see that real-time data as well. I think this is kind of another selling point that I need to continue to impress upon people, because this is a great tool for farmers in the fall as they're looking to see when they can be getting best done to do the fall manure application, and then also in the spring when farmers are out trying to think about when to get into the field for planting. You could come here, you could see a forecast, and I think it could really help out farmers in a different way. But now I get some questions about, well, how is this, I mean, is it working? How do you think it's doing? So what I'm going to show you now is some actual model comparisons to Discovery Farm data. So we have had some really good solid forecasts that I've been really happy about. So here's a day one forecast for July 18th. This is the precip that was also for, oh, that's for July 20th, excuse me. But you can see that they are, they match pretty well. And I'm going to look at data right here from a former Discovery Farm site in Blue Earth. So what you can see is clearly it's in severe. The whole area is in severe. So there's a good likelihood they're going to get runoff. If you look at the map or at the data table, again, it's indicating that it's in severe risk. Now the precip, you know, really should it be at severe for 0.2 inches? No, but that means that there's other factors coming into play. Remember, this isn't just a forecast based on precip. It's looking at a lot of different factors. So when we look at the data, you can see that, I mean, this might not look like much, but again, this is a small site that's on the edge of a farm field. And what they saw here is we had a good response to the rainfall and then a good response with the runoff. So this was the second highest event that we had at the Blue Earth site that last year. And, you know, I thought it worked really well. And again, we would tell a farmer, this is a day that you should not be out applying manure. However, I would not be honest if I didn't talk to you about some misses. So here's a forecast. This one was from July 3rd last year. So what you can see is we got a lot of runoff forecasted for the north central part of the state. And we're going to look at what happened at the Redwood Falls. So here you can see, here's the daily QPF or the precip forecast. You know, everything's going north. We should have no problems here. Well, we got 7 inches of rain at the Redwood site. Highest amount we ever had, historic. So you can see the big rainfall event, the big runoff. So we completely missed it. So if you were a farmer and you'd been looking, you wouldn't have been looking at the site because it would have said nothing. And it was a big miss. So we've kind of tried to dig in, see what happened. And the forecaster at Chanhassen that I work with said summer convection storms are really hard. They can pop up kind of unexpectedly. And even though they had been tracking it, you know, it didn't go as north as they thought, and it stayed central. So that's where I think if we could switch to the 4-day or the 4 times a day being updated, I think we'd have a better chance at catching events like this and not being so completely off. So finally, looking at some further comparisons, I looked at 6 edge of field sites where we monitor, and we had 102 events that occurred from May 1st through September 30th. Of those, 87 or 85% were predicted to have some level of event. That makes me pretty happy. That's okay, that's working pretty good. But this doesn't make me happy. There was also 106 events predicted where no runoff occurred, 39 of those being a severe prediction. That's what I'm digging into currently. I'm trying to figure out, why is the model, what's going on? Is it just maybe a certain area of the state, or, you know, but again, I'm just looking at 6. This is a whole state worth of coverage, but we can only work with the edge of field sites that we have. So I want you to remember that this is a tool. So it's something that you should use in conjunction with other things that you would be looking at. And we do think that there's, you know, it's helpful to be able to inform landowners about decisions about doing application. So anytime that we can delay an application that would have run into the river, I think we're winning. So in wrap up on this, I want to say it's a new tool. We're continuing to learn about it. We want it to be used to help make daily applications decisions. We continue to review it and dig into it and see what's going on to make sure we can improve it each year. And if you're interested, make sure to sign up for those risk text or email alerts, and there's the address. And now something completely different is the career advice. So when Tracy asked me to come talk, I thought, what would I have liked to have heard when I was a graduate student? And I think it's always interesting hearing about where people have worked and things that they have learned on their jobs. So I came from an undergraduate degree in environmental studies and a minor in geology from Duluth. I will say I didn't really know what I wanted to do after I graduated from 4 years, which didn't make my parents very happy. And I will also say we didn't have, the internet was there, but it wasn't like this great job searching function. So I was looking in newspapers and newsletters, and I found this RCRCA out in Redwood Falls, and I was like, but they had a stream hydrology and a watershed planner. So I put out my application, got a call. I went to do an interview in front of a board of like guys who were about in their 80s, and I got hired, and it was exciting, and I made $12 an hour minimum wage starting out. But it was my first job, so it was good. And what I should say is RCRCA is a joint powers organization. They're still around today. They have an executive director, and then they had a board of directors, so we had to answer to them each month. That board makes up from, this is an 8-county area, so there was a member from each of those counties. And through that, I learned a lot about the different county staff and just the organization around. But I will say some things that I learned from that first position was sign up for events and be helpful. I learned the most when I was doing work that wasn't in my job description. I'd never been canoeing before, and we hosted canoe events. So I had to go out, go canoeing, interact with the public, help them canoe. So I had to figure that out. But by the end of my time there, I was helping put together those canoe events and scout locations. And it was a really fun thing that I learned directly from my job. Also be prepared to be bored, which sounds terrible, but you're coming from an environment where you've been doing a lot, hanging out with friends, having a great time, and then you might have to move someplace where you don't know anybody, and you come and you feel like you might, like, gosh, I was just in grad school, I just know all this stuff, and there's not a lot for you to do. But sometimes I have found that that can lead to great ideas. Oftentimes the best work I've gotten to do is when I've been sitting there and saying, hey, you know what, nobody's doing this. I want to do this, and I'm going to show them how this is important. And it's just been a really good philosophy to always be looking to see where you can kind of pitch in. Be open to new opportunities. I had only been there 6 months when the hydrologist got let go, and I was like, hey, that kind of sounds fun. I want to learn more about the stream hydrology. And I got the job, I got a raise, and I got some really lot more interesting work, to which to this day, now I'm a hydrologist. So it's my thanks to that guy who got fired that I got his job and I was able to continue to do that work. So after I was there for 2 years, I switched positions and I went to Met Council. So Met Council is a regional government agency that represents the 7-county metro area. I'm sure you guys have heard about it. I was brought in on grant funding for some unique work in the Minnesota River Basin. So I was in charge of 6 sites in the Minnesota River Basin, which I shared responsibility with Department of Ag. Okay, so this was a different job now. So before I lived in Redwood Falls with 7 people. Now I lived in Mankato and I had 1 coworker. I had to learn to be really self-sufficient, and I looked for ways to get to know people in the area since I didn't have many coworkers. I loved this work, but it is difficult being grant funded, which maybe as students you can understand, soft money. I was about 2 years into this position when Met Council decided they weren't going to take the money anymore. So I was literally on my last day. I had turned in my keys. I had shut down the sites. I was quite sad, and they decided to keep the money. So kind of a roller coaster. So I had my job back, but at that time I decided, you know what, I need to do something different. So I looked into doing graduate work. So I met with my boss. I said, hey, what do you think about me taking some graduate classes, and could I do it on my job? And he said, sure. So starting 2002, I began my grad school career. I did want to show some fun pictures because I was going back in time. So this was me at Little Cobb, taking a sample, Minnesota River at Judson. And then here's, or no, that St. Peter is that middle one, Judson. I want to note I would not take the samples there now. I should have found some more active water while I look at these photos. But again, it was fun to be out, fun to have these stations. Met Council was a good job, but again, a few things I learned from being there is that if you take a job in a field office, it can be pretty isolating. I made a point to get up to the metro plant where my coworkers were at least every 2 weeks or month, just to stay connected and have people actually know who I am. Your coworkers, it's difficult if nobody, like, oh, where are you? You're in Mankato? I didn't know we even had a spot out there. Again, volunteer for events. That's a great way to get to know people. I helped run children's water festivals. I did canoe events, other things just to try and get to know people, get my name out there. But also make sure you understand the career path your position is on. This job was essentially a one-stop position. I wasn't going to get promoted from this because I was on grant funding. It was very limited. So I knew I had to look for a different opportunity. But to go back to my master's degree, I was able to do 1 class a semester for about 1.5 years, and then I went to work part-time to take 3 classes in 1 semester. And I defended my thesis in May of 2006, this Assessing River Water Quality Trends in the Minnesota River Basin. It's a really good read. I highly recommend it. I think it's great, but don't take a look. I was very proud though, because it is hard. It's a lot of work to get to this point and to be able to successfully do it. And I was quite proud to finish. And then I will say this was 90% Satish. We did get a paper published, and so thanks to him, we had that happen. But I will say I couldn't handle being on grant funding anymore, so I took a new position. I went to work at the North Central River Forecast Center, which is part of the federal government. It was a hydro tech job, which was totally a step back. It was tough to like be here and then kind of go here, but it was secure money, and that at that time was what I needed. And I would encourage you, if you're ever interested in river forecasting, this center is right here in town. It's in Chanhassen. So there's just one of them. There's a few river forecast centers around the nation, and we're really fortunate to have the one that does the forecasting for all these locations right here in Chanhassen. So I did both admin work. I did get to do flood forecasting at this spot, but a few things I learned here was realize what classes you need. Even though I had experience, I'd been a hydrologist for 6 years, I could not apply to be a full-time hydrologist with the USGS because I hadn't taken calculus and physics. And since I had just finished my master's, I really had very, very low motivation to go back and take more classwork. So even right now, with about 20 years of experience, I don't think I could get a hydro job at USGS. Their loss, I know, but just know you're at that opportunity. Make sure you know about your classwork. And then just continue to network. I kept in pretty close contact with my coworker from MDA, and I said, hey, if a job ever comes up at MDA, tell me about it. And I waited about 9 months. I knew a job was coming. I interviewed for it. It got put on hold. I was really patient, and then I was able to get a position there. So since 2006, I have been at the Department of Agriculture. I've been both a Hydro 2, a Hydro 3, which is what I am right now, and a hydrologist supervisor. So I supervised the unit for about 3 years. I've done a variety of work. I've run Tier 3 surface water sampling stations. Like I said, supervisor. I've been a project manager. Lots of reports. Right now I'm working on a huge report for cyanazine. So it's been great work. I really enjoy it. MDA is a great organization to work with. And I just can't say enough positive things about the monitoring unit that I'm in. So I would say lessons I've learned here is say yes to opportunities. I got offered the supervisor position when I had been there about 2 years because the current supervisor quit and he went to spend more time with his family, moved out of state. I was not looking to be supervisor for a few years because I was the youngest person on staff, so that means I was supervising everybody who was older than me. But you have to say yes to opportunities. So I said yes, and it was a good experience, and I got to learn a lot. And don't be afraid to say yes. And then also don't be afraid to ask for special considerations once you've proven yourself. I worked there for about a year, and then I went on maternity leave and came back, and I said, hey, could I just work 4 days a week? And they were fine with that. They valued me as an employee. They wanted to keep me, so I was able to go down in some time, yet still spend some time with my family and get work done. And so I've had actually a variety of work schedules over the years. Right now I work part-time, and it's great. I mean, I actually took a year off, and they kept my position. I went back and worked a day a week for about 4 years because I spent the rest of the time home with my family. So again, I was a valued commodity though, because they knew me, they knew my work, they knew I'd get stuff done. So you really want to build that up for yourself. So finally, just overall career advice as you're looking to get a job. Be flexible and say yes often, even if you think you might not like the work. I mean, I would never have pegged when I left Duluth that I'd be a hydrologist. I liked water, but it wasn't like, ooh, hydrology, that sounds cool. I just wasn't my thing. And it's great that I said yes, and I learned this, and now it's been something that I've had a lot of fun with. Explore options, especially if you aren't happy. I will say that being a federal, a state, a county employee, I have worked with some great employees, and I've worked with some terrible coworkers. And I think some people need to be bold, and if you're not happy in your position, you make people unhappy around you. Go out. There are lots of positions to be found. I would say network. Make sure you look for those opportunities where you can get to meet people, get your name out there, ask them about their positions, And also, just don't be afraid to ask. Ask your new boss, hey, can I take this class? I think this looks really interesting. Or can I go to this conference? Will you pay for it? I mean, the worst thing that they can say is no, but the best thing is they say yes, and you get some good opportunities. Also, have a short list of jobs that you're interested in, and then reach out to those who are currently in those positions. I know a lot of people who would be happy to talk to you if you were curious about hydrologists or other things, where most likely people are willing to help. And then finally, talking about state jobs. So since I have been a supervisor, I've had hired like 4 or 5 people in the past. So I'm pretty familiar with the state job application process. I would say you're looking to be a hydrologist. What I would advise is you go to the state system, you see what the preferred and the basic qualifications are. So in theory right now, we probably get 50 to 100 applications for a Hydro 1 or a Hydro 2 position. So if I'm sorting through those resumes, I will look at who has the basic requirements. And if a resume doesn't even meet my basic requirements, I probably don't look at it anymore. I put it over here and you're dead to me, which is terrible, but with 50 to 100, I have to do something. So if you go through that list and you go, oh, wow, I see a lot of these jobs say it needs ArcGIS, and I don't have ArcGIS, I would encourage you to go get some ArcGIS experience. That's really important. And also, if you do land an interview, I would suggest, in that case, we're usually interviewing 10 to 12 people. Tips on that is be prepared. I mean, nothing looks worse than coming in and you don't understand what the job is, or you haven't even really looked at the job description, or you can't really talk about what you have been doing. I would also say make sure you have some questions for me. One of the criteria is as we score people, so as you're talking to me, we're scoring you on everything you're saying. And then these scores get ranked against other people. And one of our questions used to be, I haven't done it for a while, but I'm pretty sure it's still there, is what questions do you have for me? Now you wouldn't think I'd be scoring that, but I am, because I've had some people who've had 0 questions. It's like, how can you come and want to work for this organization, but you don't have any questions about, like, tell me what's great about MDA, or tell me what's terrible, or tell me more about this research project that you did 2 years ago. Show me that you're interested. Show me that you want the job. Those are the people that we're looking for to work for the states and who we're trying to get in. So just some things to keep in mind. That's all I have. I know that was a lot. So runoff, risk, and career. So I want to thank you for your attention, and I'm welcome to take any questions you guys might have. Yes.
So for the runoff risk, is it kind of analogous to the universal soil loss equation? That a lot of it seems to be just from like weather and like rainfall velocity and the predicted values. But are you doing the soil types around the state for each county and how those may play into the erosibility or cover crop or?
From what I know, again, I'm not on that end of that would be something that the National Weather Service is figuring out. But as far as I know, it can't go that deep into it, because that's just we would need that type of data set to be able to do that and be able to link it with the forecast. So as far as I know, it's not looking at soil types, but they do, I'm trying to think, with the soil moisture, there might be some consideration at that. So I'd have to dig into that further, but just know it's a pretty complex model, which sometimes feels like a black box, but that's a great question. I'm just not sure on that one. Yes.
So I have a question on that tool too, but it's
Yep.
a little more on the idea of what you were showing is that you were really satisfied with the predictions that were being made, but it was definitely over predicting in some respects.
Yep.
And what I've heard is a major problem with severe weather forecasters is they throw out these warnings and then folks end up not responding to them anymore because they're so used to hearing them.
Exactly.
And do you get problems with private applicators saying, look, if I listen to the model every time, I'd be stuck until July?
That's a very good point, and that's where we are I'm concerned about that over prediction, especially because we can only give, it was free to go to the county level. I mean, I would have preferred to only send a text if it was on your address, because then that would be even more specific. So there, I would say this isn't being really widely used yet, so I haven't heard those type of comments, but that's why I'm not out there beating the drum about it yet either, because I want to get to the bottom where that number where I said there was 102 events and 39 were severe. I'd feel a lot better if that number was like, we missed on 10, or, you know, because again, yeah, if somebody starts getting their phone buzzed for 14 days straight and only 2 of those was actually an event, we're going to lose them. They're never going to look at it. So that's why we're continuing to do this digging to make sure we understand it better. But I would say this model has been running quite long in Wisconsin, and they're a lot further ahead in terms of outreach, and they have felt overall it has done a pretty good job at prediction, and people are using it and having good feedback. But again, I am worried about that it is over predicting. Yeah.
So 2 questions.
Yes.
One is related to your soil temperature. So I'm curious how you studied from this limited number of the 2 inch and 6 inch soil temperature data to the highest state.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first question. And so the second question is to follow up on that, false positive and false negative warnings that, I was wondering whether you looked at any correlation of those 2 different types of errors to seasons or soil types or anything environmental conditions.
So I'll answer your second question first. So in terms of correlations, at this time, I haven't. I mean, I am just looking at a window of May through September. So I kind of feel like that is basically one season. You know, I'm trying to look at the times where those edge of field stations are running really well, and I feel like the forecasts are running really well. But that are some of the next things I'm going to look at is there a particular part of the state that I can tell is not forecasting as smoothly as others? Is it just the severe that we're over predicting, but all the lows and moderates are okay? I've done some of that analysis, but I just didn't put that in here. So your first question was about the soil temperatures. Now, again, I think it is using all of those data points as part in the model, and then there is extrapolation out. So again, that's why we call it a forecast. So you shouldn't bet the farm on it. But I think that's why I've seen really good agreement between the real-time data and what we're seeing in the forecast. And again, they are running these simulations based on real data, and they're tweaking and doing adjustments as well. So it's not just a guess. I mean, there is a lot of sweat and hard work that went behind to make sure that this is showing good data. Yes, Dr. Mello.
So the risk for applying manure would be greatest if you have surface applied manure without any incorporation, or, if you have injection, you're not going to have very high risk, even if there's a rainstorm. So is your intent to really sort of use this tool in areas where you have beef cattle or dairy manure applications, or maybe poultry?
Yep, anything that's the surface applied. And I do think we have not publicized it this way, but I think you could look at it. I mean, we've had people from MnDOT who are interested in this when they're looking at any type of runoff that they could be having from sites where they're doing road work. They want to know about this. But I also think if you're applying a pesticide and you're putting it on top, spraying any of that, that could also be something where you could look at this. But yeah, it doesn't necessarily, I don't think it works as well when you're injecting, because that should be going in. Let's hope that's not running off. So it is definitely just things that are being applied on the top. Question?
Well, I too. What about construction sites? That's leading top runoff in major urban areas comes from these construction sites with open soil. Is the outreach going to them? Because you mentioned in the Bill video, you're aware that farmers are only a piece of the puzzle, but is the outreach going to the other pieces?
Yes, we have been in touch. I know I had a coworker who has a friend at MnDOT, so he's, looked at this and been aware of it, but it's, again, part of that bigger piece of the puzzle, but yes, they're on our list and people that we want to consider. Anything, it doesn't just have to be farmers who are putting out manure. Even myself, if I was going out to do some gardening and I was going to be applying stuff on the top, it could apply to just me saying, hey, you know what, there's a risk of rain today, and I know that the model's showing me that my soils are saturated. I'm going to wait until tomorrow when things are going to be better. Oh.
Well, I was going to say, what would be your, to test to see if the nutrient loading from surface runoff is going down among the states once this has been incorporated?
Oh, goodness.
How best without false positives, false negatives, or is it even possible to be able to correlate any increases or decreases back to application methods based off the model prediction?
That's a great question, and I think that would be really difficult to do, because even in the water quality world, it's hard. Sometimes you do these practices and then they'll say, well, we might see a benefit in the Minnesota River 15 years later from this. There's these lag effects. So I think I would not want to try and tie in and say, okay, we think we have 1,000 people who are using this and look that the water quality 5 years later is better. It's due to the runoff risk. I just don't think we could ever make that leap. But I do think based on, I can see how many people are signing up. We can do more in terms of outreach with the actual manure applicators as this project continues to grow, to say, hey, are you using this? Do you think it's been helpful? I think we can have some of those social checks to get that yes, no.
You can do like one test farm that only applies during the advised days to apply.
Yeah.
And another test farm that applies based off of a random selection of days, and then see if
Yeah.
it's better.
Yeah. I think one of the drawbacks right now with this program is it's basically me as a hydrologist kind of going out and talking about it, which is great, but I think we need, I'm in partnerships with Melissa Wilson, who's here at the U, and she does manure management. So we work together on this, but really we need more partners to know about this and people to go out, especially people who are interacting with farmers, which isn't me. But I know a lot about this because this is one of the things about networking. I used to work at the National Weather Service, so when they were looking for somebody to help with this project, they thought of me, and I kind of got pulled in that way. So those are great suggestions, and we continue to look for partners, but again, I want to make sure it works really well before I pull in too many people. So that I'm kind of at this tipping point where we want more people using it. We want to understand if they think it's working well, but I don't want too many people using it if it's not working well, and then people don't ever come back to it, because there's a lot of things vying for people's attention, and I don't want to screw up the one chance I get with them.
I have a couple of questions.
Yep.
So first, I'm just wondering if this model is flexible in terms of, for example, if farmers want to look at the farm, or they can do that, or they look to the country where they are.
You can look right for your address. So you can't get alerted on your address, but if you went, I can just bring it up right now. If we went to your address, and then you can bookmark it, so you could go to your spot every day. Like I say, it's not very exciting right now, which I think is okay because farmers want it to dry out. So I'm not complaining. So here you could put in a location search and get, directly to your address, and then you could bookmark it. So if you wanted to see just where your spot is each day, you could.
And I have also another one is, how about the accuracy of this model, and what would be the error source? For example, the weather data sources, or the model conception.
Mm-hmm. Well, because it's feeding information directly from the National Weather Service models, I feel like the error source is low. But again, when you have forecasting, like the example I showed you, that was completely wrong. Because the model wasn't fed the precip, it couldn't do that 7-inch, it couldn't replicate that because the model didn't get 7 inches of precip put into it. So the model is only as good as the data that comes in. And so if we have a poor forecasting, or if the forecast models aren't right, then it's kind of like garbage in, garbage out. But I do put my faith in the National Weather Service that they have good information. But it is something to be aware that, again, it's a forecast. So we would never do regulations on this. I know there was concerns in Wisconsin and even here when we started at this to say, well, would you go back and tell a farmer that, hey, we saw that Chippewa County, we didn't, you were out applying, but it was a severe risk and that ran off and it killed those fish. You're in big trouble. I mean, that'll never happen with this because it is a forecast tool. But I know in Ohio, like one of the groups, they have made it be, Ohio has a lot stricter water quality regulations. And so one of theirs is they can put this in their kind of their packet when they're doing their applications and print out this map and say, look, it was clear. I have the go ahead to go and do my application. So different states, different ways of looking at it. Yes.
Yeah, I checked your website and I'm interested to see if there are some documents that at least write something about how you build this model and how that model works, but I didn't find that. Although I see there is a clear statement about this interactive tool that shows that map, but it is documents to.
I'm continuing to load things. So our partner at National Weather Service is the one who's kind of behind making all those documents because he's the one who knows the best about it and he's in the process. So as soon as those get made, they will be updated. We do have like a how to use this map that we have some information about. But yes, that's one of the things that's still missing is kind of that little bit more background. I mean, we tell you it's run on the Sacramento model and we do these different things, but kind of the nitty gritty details aren't up there yet.
What kind of got off this question was about the accuracy of how far you can zoom in. Well, what's like the raster size for the ArcGIS map? What is it using? So if you zoom into your address,
yep,
it's obviously predicting an area that's greater than whatever, maybe your 5 acres or 100 acres.
Well, so each, it's that grid. So it's a 2 kilometer by 2 kilometer grid. So it's basing on that.
The model will go down to every 2 kilometers.
Yep.
It's a separate prediction.
Yeah. So if we go right, you can only zoom in so far.
Okay.
And then that is the grid that it gives you. So there was some GIS manipulation to make sure that we weren't, if it was a half a grid or something, it forced it into being these blocks. So in actuality, our life's not made up of, a watershed's not made up of blocks. It's a.
And so you saying the soil or the landscape features aren't even in the models, like slope or?
No, that is considered. I'm just saying as we look at this, as it's overlaid on top, it's just this grid. It's not.
But like when I say the soil data and everything for each particular region, if you're going to a 2 kilometer square, it must have a predicted value about. Is it just the difference between rainfall and acidity, sort of?
Well, yeah, and it's looking at the soil moisture, the snow melts.
Soil moisture on a grid if it's extrapolating based off of very spread out soil.
Well, again, there's the great questions, but it is running a model and it's looking at soil simulations throughout. So again, I don't have that. You're asking difficult questions, which is good. I'm just not that back end of the person. I'm the front end of the person. So I'm just not as aware of it. Yeah, but it's a great question. But
feds do it. Like, how are they getting this information?
Yeah, and you could say, some of this it's a model, so it's making extrapolations based on information that they know about soil types across.
It's really cool.
Across the state. So yeah, I think it can always get better. Like when we talk about the feds are looking at a national water model, so that's going to start coming online in the next year or two. So it's completely going to change the way they do their forecasting, and it'll completely probably blow this up, and it'll look different again based on what they're seeing. But I think that's all contingent upon funding, and we know that often seems to fall away. So, one more question.
Is NOAA also providing the snow depth data?
The no risk? Yes, I believe. Yep, so NOAA has,
Is NOAA providing the snow depth?
yep, so the no risk is the arm of NOAA that does all the snow information. So I'm sure it's feeding right from the no risk group into getting this snow depth information across.
All right, thanks a lot.
Yeah. Great questions, man. That was good, thank you. Made me think.
I'd love to hear more commentary on state agency application area processes.
Nobody asked me on that, so the vault's closed now.
Yeah.
Well, it was good, thank you for inviting me in. You know,